grading last summer. And so we had to weigh the value of Gradebook 2, which was the one our instructors had, against what they might be gaining in the new gradebook. So we sent instructors a survey to identify what their pain points were and determine if we could or should move ahead. So here's what we heard from our faculty at Notre Dame. And pretty much it was 75% of the respondents. They came in with the new gradebook off the shelf, and they'd been asking for it right away. So they wanted to have the choice to specify how students see their grades, which portions of it, whether there's a combo or not. And they wanted to be able to hide a grade, but include it in the grade calculation. And to this day, I'm not really sure about the use cases for this. So if anybody knows why faculty might do that at your institution, chime in. Okay, that was 5 seconds of blankness. Well, it was about 68% of our respondents on this survey wanted this. And as it turned out, they just wanted a temporarily hidden column for participation scores that they would do a big reveal with, or they wanted a column they'd use to curve grades. And these kinds of instructors also didn't tend to display the course grade to students. So they wanted to reserve the course grade portion to the very end of the course. So this strike-through or visible indication that grades have been dropped or excused, this has been added in the next 8 months as well. And it's just a little nicety, right? It should have been present from the very beginning, because you need to know if that grade has been automatically dropped due to a category setting or that it was manually excused by the instructor. So now there's a visual indication. At Notre Dame, we attach rosters or sections to each of our sites, and some of those sites contain a combination of rosters. Maybe it's cross-listing, which you probably do at your institution, or in some cases, the same instructor's teaching multiple sections, and even though we create the sites for them, they ask us, let's put all the rosters together. So this means that they want the section to have their grades displayed independently. They want to be able to filter by that, and they also want to export, right, so that they can submit to the SIS as independent sections of the same course. That's how an SIS does it. So we really got active in the spring and the summer to make these improvements. We had faculty from Notre Dame. We went to the Imperial Conference. Laura Serra, my colleague, had an ad hoc meeting there with others talking about what they also desired from the new gradebook to see, are the Notre Dame instructors pretty much the same as others? Are there other key things? Can we wrap this all together into a project for improving the gradebook? And so that was the conference. And then we started using this. Let's see if this is a clickable link. The difference is this is Confluence, where this has been what started a long time ago by our dear friend Matthew Jones, and Laura Serra has just modified it. So you can see Gradebook 1 or Gradebook Classic, as we're now calling it, Gradebook 2 and NG, and sort of let people vote. Do we like it? Did we get it done? Are we doing it right now? So this is sort of your go-to place for what's going on with the gradebook right now. Are there any questions or any comments about this voting? Did you all know that it exists? Go ahead and place that in the chat, or unmute yourself. No takers, huh? Okay, let's talk about improvements as they're coming down the road. Oh, good grief. Having trouble with my slides here. All right, coming down the road. This was another one that Notre Dame instructors really wanted, and actually their departments did. It's really not a big deal to put the grade books, the grade points. These are quality grade points used in the US. We're on a 4-point scale, and the number of quality points you get for a letter grade is always the same, but instructors don't seem to think of it that way. So we went ahead and added them so that they will display right here and instructors can see where that is. And that led to the responsiveness of this chart, so that when you put the GPAE, the grade points in there, you will automatically calculate the course's grade point average, not an individual student, but the courses. And this was really helpful for departments and instructors who grade on a curve. And then these remove buttons came in, and this has been nice too, because as you know, not everyone uses the same grading scale, and this also allows for maximum flexibility from country to country and institution to institution. So now you can remove a mapping or add one. And I mentioned this before. This is how it looks now, the visual indicators for the dropped grades. And so you can see if it's been automatically dropped by a category setting or manually excused by the instructor. I don't know if you can see that really well. That's the little calculator with a strike through it. And then the gradebook export wasn't really friendly to instructors who teach more than one section or more than one course, because once you download the export onto your desktop, they're all named the same thing. Or they might have that, that identifier that doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. So in this one, you can filter by group or section in a custom export, and that will also name it after that section. So for example, you'll see this is the Notre Dame naming convention, so that would be the whole thing. Coming up, not yet released, but coming soon to a Sakai near you, is to scale existing grades. And if we go over to Sakai 33107, by the way, if you don't have an account in Jira, you really should get one, because this is where the community adds issues or feature requests, and it is also where you can vote for the issue. And you can see right here that this one has 7 votes. It has been verified as being fixed in Sakai 19. So this is the sample scenario. All the students get grades out of 10. So Jane gets an 8, Bobby gets a 7, and then the instructor decides that later that grade shouldn't have been out of 10, but out of 100. And that feature, as we go back here, allows you to change the point value of a gradebook item, and it will rescale the whole thing. That's just huge. I'm going backwards, go forwards. And then this one's been asked for a long time, and that is that you can independently include a grade in calculations without releasing it to students, or vice versa. And so that is now coming in 19. Okay. Oh, this one was huge too. When Gradebook NG first came out, the students would see their grades either as points or percentage, but they wouldn't know, especially in the points, how many points the entire assignment or test or whatever was worth. So now, even if it's ungraded, they will still see how much the entire thing is worth. And you can also see an example there of an excused piece. And every time I go to mouse over that, my pops up. Okay, so this allows you to include in grade while hiding from students, scale existing grades, excuse individual grades by student. So it's not the entire thing that's excused, it's just that one particular student. So if you go to the JIRA site and select issues, you can choose Gradebook as a component and see everything that we're working on. You can participate in adding issues that no one else has added yet, see if maybe something that occurred to you is already being worked on or it's already been reported. And now for discussion. This is where you have to jump in and talk.
Well, Laura, I have a question.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I saw that you said you could change the point value of, am I understanding that correctly, of a Gradebook item? You could scale it?
On the fly.
Okay.
So let's say you had an assignment that you thought was a 10-pointer, and you realized after you'd started grading that it was definitely more difficult than a 10-pointer. And so you wanted to change the number of points. You can check the box for scaling it. And the grades that you've already given to students will be scaled.
Okay, that only affects like Gradebook items, not things coming from tests and quizzes or assignments.
That's true.
Okay, I just want to be sure because that could get a little messy. And the other thing is, I assume that you can only do that if you're not dropping grades in that category. Because right now, all the grades in a category have to have the same point value.
You know, I'm not sure. I'm sure Laura Sarah would have that answer on the top of her mind, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Sorry.
Is anybody else on the call? No? All right, I better write that down, look it up, and put it in the session notes in our forum when I find out the answer. Rebecca, could you run that question by me again?
Right now, as far as I know, I'm on 11, but I've been keeping track of 12 and 19. I thought that all of the Gradebook items in a category that has dropped grades, all of the total points have to be exactly the same. So if you're dropping a grade, every single Gradebook item assigned to that category would have to have, say, 100 points. So what happens now?
Okay, so actually, when you think about it, there's nothing that constrains you from giving the individual items in a weighted category. That's the kind of category we're talking about, right?
Right.
The category itself might be worth 35% of the grade. And in order to do that, so that the category is worth that, as you said, every grade item in that category has to have the same number of points. However, in Gradebook 2, it's our experience that one of the features that Gradebook 2 had that Gradebook NG doesn't have is that ability to weight individual items. And so Laura, Sarah, and I have been recommending to Notre Dame faculty that if they do want to weight individual items, then they should give that grade item inside a weighted category more points. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this was just pertaining to dropping grades. If you can have all sorts of different grade points
Right.
in a category. It's just when you drop grades, then it doesn't know which one to drop. If you have different total points and different assignments in the same category. So it's not categories and weighting that's really affecting, it's dropping a grade within a category.
If you drop the grade within a category, then it doesn't get counted in the average, right? It would be excluded.
Well, right now, I don't know what it's doing in 12 and 19, but in 11, it tries to figure it out on its own. And it kind of, it does unusual things to your gradebook column when you try to drop something, and there's some items that are 80 points and some items are 100 points.
Which gradebook are you using?
We're using the new gradebook, or the classic gradebook in 11.4. We're using both.
Both the new one and the classic one. And the behavior you're describing exists in both.
Yeah, this happens to anytime someone drops. If they don't drop a grade in a category, it doesn't matter. They don't have problems.
All right. I will get Laura Sarah's attention when she gets back from her quick trip out of the office. Anybody else? Thank you, Rebecca. That was good. Sorry I couldn't answer it, but I will get an answer for you and post it in the forums for this session.
It's okay. It's really complicated, and I only know about it because we have instructors doing it off and on.
Jolie in the chat says that she believes that your assessment is correct. In the Screen Steps documentation, there's a note that says in order to drop items within a category, all items in that category must be worth the same point value. So I was mistaken with that. If you're dropping, only applies to dropping, I think. Thank you, Jolie. Wow, this is a quiet off.
Don't feel bad, Laura. My BOF was quiet too.
Okay. That helps.
Even when I prefaced it in the beginning that this is a conversation, not really a presentation. We're going to talk.
Yeah.
It's some really great work that's been happening already, and it's a really unbelievable effort looking at that Confluence page that has all the items listed there across Classic and Gradebook 2 and how to address some of those gaps in Gradebook NG. It's so great to see the progress here that's already happening. Especially, excusing a grade in a category, some of the things that you've already talked about, Laura. It's really great work.
Yeah, the group that got together and the effort that Laura Sarah has put into this has just been huge. I mean, even this chart is very easy to keep track of where things are. And also that we're making things happen, right? There's complete marks there. I don't think this chart isn't sortable. But if you look at the number of green ones, I really do believe great progress is being made.
Laura, remind me, is there something on this list about the view? During my session, which was a UX BOF, Terry Golightly, who was our fantastic moderator, she brought up the Gradebook NG as sort of an example of even though UX testing was done extensively for Gradebook NG, and there's really great features there, that a lot of faculty still kind of have pain points with the spreadsheet view, and that they often just want that sort of item list view. I can't remember if that is listed here on this Confluence page as a feature.
Well, what I think you're talking about is something that Laura Sierra has been advocating for a while, and that is going from Gradebook 2. Our instructors had a view in Gradebook that did show them the weighting, the setup, basically all on the same screen as the grades. So it would surprise me greatly if that is not on this list.
And I bet it is. I haven't visited the list in a little while, so my memory is a little fuzzy. There's a lot here. So I thought I would ask again, because I know that that's something that has come up here at Duke, and I may have even found it and voted on it some months ago. So I apologize if that is the case.
I'm sort of just doing a find on views, the word view.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the better one to do. This may be this one right here. Display the value of each grade item has in the overall course grade for the instructor view. Yeah, I'm thinking this is it. Feature request. Yes. And here's the display on how they saw that in Gradebook 2,
Right.
which doesn't, there's no analogous kind of view to this in the new Gradebook. Yeah, so that is there. And if we go back to here.
And there's a view like that in Classic, which is also the default view. You know, the point I was making earlier when Terry and I were discussing this in the UX BOF is that the spreadsheet view has always been there. It was there in Classic, it just wasn't the default view. But what's missing is we have, it's not just that we have the spreadsheet view as the default view and there's a lot of scrolling that has to happen. We lost that other view of just, let me just see all my stuff, all my assignments in a list.
Right.
So I can kind of just see those independent of all the long student names, because sometimes you have a lot of students and you really just want an idea of the overall, what are all of my assessments? What are all the stuff that I'm grading? And maybe what it's worth and sort of a high level, right?
Right, right. Yeah, the settings page only indicates your categories, not your items. So there really isn't a view.
Right, exactly. No, there isn't.
Yep. Well, it looks like it's been filed in JIRA and it's awaiting review.
Excellent.
Yeah. Anyone else? Comments, addition, detraction, distraction? Sean, you must be in the room too. You put in just after Jolie the answer to Rebecca's question. You want to talk, Rebecca, on why you put this link in the chat?
Oh, I just put the link into where you're showing them the information from.
It's like I can pull up
That was the
documents.
moving from Gradebook Classic, Gradebook 2 to Gradebook NG.
Pull up a chair. This is really like the most communications I've ever.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
He needs to mute here.
It's hard to be like, yes, it's this one. They can't open.
Yeah, I'm hearing background noise too.
This is slightly changing.
Thank you. Okay, what we expect is Sure, sure. This is, I didn't recognize it as the screen I was showing because I was way down here in the weeds, so to speak. But there are good videos here on what you get when you migrate. All right, guys.
Laura, can I ask you a
Go
quick
ahead,
question?
Carla.
I'm sorry if you mentioned this already. I had to pay attention to something else for a moment. But I was wondering, there is something that we have always wanted in the Gradebook, and it's very simple, that when you can change the course grade without releasing to students. I think that that was part of what was on your list. Is that something that is possible now?
Yes, it is possible in 12.
Okay.
If I go back to these, I'm not seeing it right here, but I know what you're talking about.
Yes. Here.
Okay. Yes,
exactly.
right here. Whether or not an individual category is. However, what I think you're talking about is not an individual column, but the course grade itself. So what I like about Gradebook NG is you can choose to show the students the points, the percentage, or the letter grade, or any combination thereof. So you can hide the course grade from them, or you can choose to show the course grade as one of those things. Many people who curve at the end of a course show the students how many points they've received out of how many are available. And it kind of gives the students an idea of their standing without having done the curve yet.
Yeah, exactly. That's the concern that we have had from faculty here, that they want to curve, but they don't want the students to see it yet. They want to test it out without releasing to the students. So the dependency of these two parameters that you're showing in there is to say, why I cannot do it without, releasing to the students. So it has always, so is it possible now would that be for 19 or for 12?
It's in 12.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we are in 10, about to move to 12 in the spring. So good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Let me show you a Gradebook that I have set up. So in the Gradebook settings, here is what Notre Dame's development environment in 12.1 looks like. And when you go to the settings, you can expand all of these. And this is the part where you can choose whether or not you display that final grade to the students. And if you so choose, and this is one of those things where you don't see the functionality if you don't choose it. If you're not going to display it, you don't care about how you're going to display it. But if you are going to display it, you can choose whether or not you show them points, letters, so forth. And it does give you a preview here. So for example, this is my B plus and my 88%. And it looks like I can't display the points because I have selected categories and weighting. No categories allows me to say, I just want to show the students how many points they've received out of how many available. So if you do that, then I'm going to go back to the grades. And I can see that Niels Bohr, in his student view mode, can only see the points.
Okay.
Now the instructor, this is scary, the instructor does have a summary tab where you can see the course grades and whatever else you've set it up as, but that is not what the student sees. You see exactly what the student sees in the student review mode. Yeah.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Welcome, Carla. Yeah. Any other comments or suggestions about the new gradebook? Here's one I didn't mention earlier. You notice this has a column that has student number in it. We now have options to set a student number or a student display ID. And the student number in this case is showing in my gradebook, but what I've got on the screen there is what information you can export. If your institution has both sort of a human readable version of an institutional ID and then perhaps some number, you can have Sakai show that number to you, which is sometimes helpful for grading if you hide their names as you're grading and just associate with the numbers. So that's what that additional column here is.
Yeah, I had a question. Is Gradebook NG in 12 or 19?
Gradebook NG is in 12.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. There are a limited number of people who have had it backported into Sakai 11, and that's been helpful to the rest of the community because they've had sort of a heads up on what was lacking and what it needs to do to go forward to become a more mature, robust gradebook. So those of you who get it in 12 are benefiting from that. Hurrah! Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm curious about one other thing, and that is has anyone converted like from 11 or 12 using Classic Gradebook? And what happens when you convert to 19 and they're not considered the same tool? Gradebook NG is a separate tool you add to your course from Gradebook Classic. So
we lost your audio, Rebecca. Yeah, no audio. I can't hear you. If
Classic is no longer supported in 19.
Right. I heard the last part of what you said, that Classic is no longer supported in 19. Now, I know Gradebook 2 is not part of Sakai 12, but I don't know about Gradebook Classic. Does anyone else know? Is Gradebook Classic still available in Sakai 12?
I think it may be, but I know it's not 19.
It is available in 12. It is hidden though, so it's not a tool that you can automatically select. It's the code is there, but it's hidden.
So, Jolie, that would mean that an institution would have the flexibility of unhiding it if they so choose, right?
Correct. That's what we did. We upgraded to 12 back in the spring, and we have both gradebooks still available. So that's why we're anxious this year to make sure that we're meeting everyone's needs for moving off of Classic, because the discussion for 19 is that Classic will move into a contrib tool status. So it will no longer be, it'll still be available, but it will no longer be part of core Sakai. And that's the discussion.
Sure. So your goal is for the new gradebook to achieve functional parity with Classic before you turn Classic off?
I think, I think in general, there may be only just a few things that people are clinging to in Classic, and we're trying to figure out, we're still trying to collect data, we're trying to get to everybody still to figure out, what is that thing? But I don't, I'm not that worried about it. I think it's going to be okay. I just, I'm trying to just hear everyone's feedback and kind of prepare them for the transition.
Sure. We have been really fortunate to have Longsight as our hosting provider, and in some cases helping us to do this kind of an upgrade here, because we had a lot of instructors still on Gradebook 2. Trying to think if I can show you what we did with Gradebook 2.
And that's a much bigger challenge, because it's a really different tool. It has very different UI and capabilities. So I can see how that's much harder than people going from Classic to NG.
Well, because the number of people who use weighted categories with weighted items in it, and that calculation is not available yet in Gradebook NG, we decided to go ahead and have all gradebooks automatically exported and placed in the resources for the instructor for all of our historic courses, right? So what you're looking at on the screen there is that there's now a folder in resources of any of our previous course sites that used Gradebook 2, so that for historic reasons they would have access, but not the students. The instructors would have access to the Gradebook 2 in the CSV format. And hopefully that'll help make that transition smoother. And of course, there's always training and consultations and stuff like that. But those who've moved already, since we've had both options available in Gradebook 11, those who've moved already have been pretty happy with it, even though that version still had the scrolling issue. If you remember that, you had multiple pages and you couldn't filter on all your students or see all your students at one time. But that too has been taken care of.
Hey, Laura, just so you know, there's only about like 10 seconds left.
Okay, Rebecca gives us. We're wrapping up here. Thank you for those of you who've participated and those of you who've listened kindly and generously as I pinch hitted for Laura Ciro. Take care, and I'll see you at the next session.
Thanks, Laura.